Everybody, we're going to get started in about 1 minute. We'll just give everybody a chance to jump on. All right, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping while we're getting everybody on. Welcome, everybody. I am Beth Krasno. I am one of the founders of Student Loan Advisors. And with me today is Aaron Longino. He is our lead student loan advisors. And I know by the number of registrants for this webinar, there is a lot of concern, anxiety, panic on federal student loans, what the recent election means for your federal student loans. And obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't look into the future, but we have been here before. So we do know what we saw last time this administration was in Washington. We do know kind of what the talk is of what's happening with loan programs. So our goal today is to give you everything that we do know, everything we think might happen, and some great call to action in the very near term to make sure that your loans are up to speed. So with that, I am going to get started. So just as an overview, if you're on this webinar, if you have federal student loans or you've got family members that have federal student loans, you're not alone. They're not alone. We are right now at $1.7 trillion in student loan debt in this country. 45 million Americans are saddled with this student loan burden. With COVID, we had a break in payments. Obviously, that ended. And then we had an on-ramp period where there was no negative penalties for late fees. And that has now ended. So we are all back at it, making payments. If you were in default prior to COVID, you're back in default now if you didn't get yourself out of default. So we are going to talk today about all things federal student loans, what to expect, where we are, what we know. And Aaron is going to lead us through this journey, and I'm going to keep an eye on the chat bar or the Q&A. Actually, I think the chat bar is probably easier. So if you have a question, I will try to get through as many as we can. This is a packed house, and we're also going to record this. So if you have to jump off, or if you have coworkers that did not make it to the webinar, we will send everybody a recording. So you will be able to share this with your coworkers or share this with your family members that weren't able to attend. So with that, Aaron, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. As Beth mentioned, I'm Aaron Longino. I'm the lead advisor. Today, we'll speak about student loan programs with an emphasis on student loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. We'll speak briefly about defaulted loans, and we'll touch on the election being over, what we know, what we don't know, and kind of what to expect. So, we'll have a new administration coming into office in January. Um, so we kind of can expect a few things. Beginning July 17th, there was an injunction against the SAVE plan, the newest income-driven repayment plan that afforded millions upon millions upon millions of borrowers a lower monthly payment. It was literally the difference between someone paying $300 and $400 a month and that same borrower paying $0 a month, $10 or $20 a month. One of the things we know from this election is that the SAVE plan isn't coming back. It won't be, the administration won't defend it in court. But court has already said it's deemed it unconstitutional. And the current administration was fighting, trying to keep the plan. The new administration isn't going to fight for the new SAVE plan. But it isn't just the SAVE plan. One of the things this lawsuit says, not only was the SAVE plan calculated incorrectly, but it had trickle down effects with the other income driven repayment plans the ones that were not passed by Congress. So there will be implications for the income-driven repayment plans. Most of them are likely going away. We'll still have a qualified plan for the forgiveness programs, which kind of leads me to my next point. Until the new administration comes in and they begin to put their imprint on the federal government, nothing has changed. From now until that administration comes in, until inauguration, student loan forgiveness is still around. The income-driven repayment plans are still around, and we'll live and move forward based on that until something changes. For about 3 weeks in college, I was a philosophy major until my mom found out and made me change my major. One of my favorite quotes by Plato is, opinions are the wilderness between knowledge and ignorance. We like to pride ourselves with being the experts in student loan, uh, with information wise, knowledge about federal student loans. We won't give our opinion too much. But I will say this, we can't expect some things to change. But until then, all the plans and programs are exactly the same. So if you think you qualify for forgiveness now, is in your best interest to be enrolled into those plans and programs before inauguration. I don't expect anything to change on day one. The wheels of government change or they move, but they move really slowly. If you think your loans are dischargeable, now is the time to have them discharged. If you think you may qualify for a forgiveness program you've never been enrolled into, now is the time to enroll into that plan. It's business as usual until something has officially changed. So even now, even in normal times, what we'll call these normal times, there's always been hurdles to student loan forgiveness. The two biggest hurdles were our previous Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. She wasn't a fan of student loan forgiveness and oftentimes simply refused to forgive loans that qualified for it. But constantly and consistently, it's the servicers that are an impediment to student loans. Your servicer are the ones you make your payments to. Your Mohilas, your Nailnets, your Navians, your Ed Financials. The servicers have literally said in open court it isn't in their best interest when student loans are forgiven because they lose money. So any of you that are really anxious about the new administration or fearful about what's going on, the new administration won't have a mindset any different than the servicers. We've always found a way to get people what they qualify for in spite of the servicers. And I don't see why that'll change under the new administration. There's always been impediments to student loan forgiveness, which is why it's good to have an expert on your side. We'll make sure everyone gets exactly what it is they qualify for, regardless of the administration, the same as we do now with the servicers, who it almost seems as if their primary job is to stop student loan forgiveness at times. So we speak a lot about student loan forgiveness. When we talk about student loan forgiveness, what do we mean? Student loan forgiveness is a federal program for any federal borrower that has direct loans. It says either you have to make 120 if you qualify for public service loan forgiveness, 240 if you do not have undergrad loans, or 300 payments for graduate or parent plus loans. You have to make 120, 240, or 300 qualified payments. At the end of that repayment period, everything that's left will be forgiven. Doesn't matter if you have $1 left or $1 million in federal student loans left. At the end of that repayment period, whatever that amount is that's left, it'll be forgiven. We say forgiven because our government doesn't communicate very well and they like to use cute words like forgiveness. But what really happens is the United States Treasury sends the Department of Education a check on your behalf and they pay off your student loans. So they'll be reported as though they've been paid in full. So forgiveness is one with federal loans, as long as those are direct loans. Once you make 120, 240, or 300 qualified payments, a qualified payment means you're repaying your loans under a qualified plan. And public service loan forgiveness has the added requirements that you also work for a qualified employer. They'll say full time, but as long as it's at least 30 hours a week on average, you'll qualify for the program.
All right, Aaron, a few questions have come in, quite a few questions, but I'm gonna give you a couple. I believe that I qualify for loan forgiveness through PSLF this month. I'm enrolled in SAVE, but I haven't made a payment for a few months due to the legal challenges. Can I move forward with loan forgiveness?
Yes, potentially. I'm going to speak carefully. I haven't reviewed your loans. 98% of people that actually qualify for public service loan forgiveness, they never get it. Usually, not always, usually is because while you as the borrower qualify, your loans do not. I would suggest to that person whom asked that question, have your loans reviewed sooner rather than later. I'll take a look at them myself or one of our advisors, and I'll be very specific about not only do you qualify for the program, excuse me, how long you'll have till you reach that point of forgiveness, and what it is that you can do, if anything, to proceed with that forgiveness while the injunction against the SAVE plan is active. Have your loans reviewed, and we'll tell you over the course of this webinar, we'll lay out how you schedule a loan review.
I think quite a few questions will be answered by that. But here's one that's a little bit different. Income-driven repayment plans are codified. So why are they not allowing people to join?
They aren't codified. So income-driven repayment plans or qualified plans for forgiveness programs were created by the Department of Education. Of the existing income-driven repayment plans, which have been around since 1994, there's only been one that was passed by both houses of Congress and signed into law by the President of the United States. So while the courts or even a different administration can get rid of most income-driven repayment plans or most qualified plans, there's one plan that unilaterally neither the legislative branch, the executive branch, nor the judicial branch can get rid of on their own. So although administrations come and go, this has been the law of the land, this particular plan since 1994, and it isn't going anywhere unless Congress repeals it and is signed into law by the President of the United States. Although there's an injunction against the SAVE plan, you are still able to be enrolled into qualified plans. It's just taking a little longer than necessary, which is why I urge everyone, even if you think you may qualify for a forgiveness program, now is the time to have your loans reviewed and to be enrolled into that program, because we simply don't know everything that'll happen after inauguration. So, and a non-qualified plan. All things being equal, this is a family of five that have about $50,000 of student loan debt, and they make about $55,000 adjusted gross income after taxes and deductibles. Everyone thinks the bill they get in the mail once they're done with school is just what they have to pay. That's their student loan payment, and it must be paid. That actually isn't true. The Department of Education has about 70 different options for repayment. That bill you get in the mail is just a default or standard repayment plan. If you look here, this borrower would be expected to pay around $530 a month. Over the course of repayment, if they were able to pay their loans off in a 10-year period, which on average is unlikely. The average repayment period is 20 years, but for the sake of argument, this is a good projection. They'd be expected over the course of repayment to pay over $63,000 out of pocket. There's no possibility of forgiveness with a standard repayment. That same borrower, everything else being equal, would pay over $400 less a year, a month. That's over $5,000 annually. They pay about $118 versus the $530. Over the course of repayment, they'd only be expected to pay about $14,160. And here's where one of the biggest differences is. The monthly is a really big difference too. But this is sort of the icing on the cake. At the end of this person's repayment period in a qualified plan, they'd have almost $50,000 left, $478, and that's what the Department of Education would expect to forgive federally tax-free. A qualified plan is literally the difference between being able to make affordable repayments, having forgiveness at the end of your repayment period, or being bogged down by student loan debt for a lot of Americans, millions of Americans, for the rest of their life. Qualified plans will help you do the responsible thing, which is make your monthly payments. And it also gives you the ability to have that debt that's left over forgiven at the end of your repayment period. 8 times out of 10, your average borrower, they repay what it is they borrowed. The amount that's forgiven is usually interest. Student loans will double over the course of repayment. Student loan forgiveness was created for that very reason.
So, Aaron, quite a few people are kind of asking a similar question, and that's for those who are enrolled in SAVE, should they move over to the income-based repayment program or move to a different IDR or wait until after January? What would be your best suggestion?
This is kind of situational. I'll give you an example. We have clients, I'll use two of them. One graduated of 2023. Student loans had not yet gone back, or rather had just gone back to repayment from the 3.5 year payment pause. This particular borrower, they're not losing any qualified time. There's a bit of uncertainty about which plan will be better for them at the time where it'll be relevant when SAVE no longer exists. So for this borrower, it's better to wait so that we can make sure we're in the best plan or program for that borrower. The injunction happened in July of 2024, this year. There's another borrower whose last month of repayment would have been in September, which means when an injunction happened, they only had 2 months left. They had 118 qualified payments. For that borrower, we were able to switch their plan so that they can make those last 2 qualified payments. So this is situational. It depends on how your loans look, the plan, the program that you're in. If you're one of the people that want to know if this is best for you, schedule an appointment to have your loans reviewed. We'll take a look at them. So we're of the belief, at the end of the day, do no harm. So if you're not losing qualified time, if you're not approaching the point of forgiveness, this forbearance for the first 60 days, for some, if you were automatically placed in it, we can use that time for your forgiveness. So it's situational. We'll have to take a look at your loans and we'll have to decide what's best for you as the individual, as opposed to me making blanket statements.
So we have a participant that's asked this question about being able to enroll in income-driven repayment plans now. Is there any barrier right now for borrowers to be enrolling in an IDR?
I don't know if I would say there's a barrier. There certainly are hurdles. The injunction against the SAVE plan, as I mentioned earlier, it has trickle-down effects on other income-driven repayment plans. So it would depend on the plan. It would depend on your loan amount. It'll also depend on your income. Some qualified plans or some income-driven repayment plans, they have an income threshold. So it really depends on the borrower. Some plans are better for some borrowers. Taking action now is essential for some borrowers. Some borrowers are in a plan and are not in any threat of losing. Sometimes I'll have them wait until the forbearance ends. So that one really depends on the borrower themselves.
Okay, I'll ask the last question. So someone who you worked with, Aaron, you were able to get them a $0 payment under an IDR, and I'm sure they're thrilled, and they're asking, how long will that last?
So income-driven repayment plans, any qualified plan for a forgiveness program, technically they're for 12 months at a time. They have to be recertified annually. This is one of the biggest hurdles to student loan forgiveness because the servicers don't tell people they have to be recertified. If it's someone we set up, we'll make sure your plan gets certified, especially if you have us for continued service. We'll at least let you know when it is. But always check your recertification date for your qualified plan, because they'll change. And historically, the servicers have not been good at all with updating people with that. But I know your question is in regards to the injunction. So everyone's recertification date that's on the SAVE plan has been moved to March. Most everyone. There are some people who had to recertify in November, but most everyone's recertification date has been moved to March. If you don't know your recertification date or didn't even know about recertification, have your loans reviewed. We'll take a look for you. That was actually a really good question. So, as the last couple of people with questions mentioned, they're in forbearance. So I'll take a step back and just explain what that means. This is from the injunction that was placed on the SAVE plan July the 18th. They're not able to calculate the SAVE plan, which is why they can't accept payments for the SAVE plan, because they have no way of calculating what that payment would be. So all 8 million borrowers, so you'll know you're not alone. There are 8 million of us. I'm on a SAVE plan as well, if that helps. All 8 million borrowers have been placed in a forbearance. Excuse me. For the first 60 days, it was a processing forbearance. Now it's been switched to an administrative forbearance. This administrative forbearance will not count towards the forgiveness of your loans, whether it's public service loan forgiveness nor student loan forgiveness. Interest will not accrue while you're in this forbearance, or rather, it will accrue retroactively. They're supposed to take it to zero once the forbearance ends. You may see it accruing slightly now, depending on how your loans are set up. However, the SAVE plan does have a built-in mechanism, if it was set up correctly, where interest shouldn't be accruing anyway, but you may not have it set up that way. So if you notice interest accruing, it's supposed to be reversed once the forbearance ends. You can make a payment. Technically, you can send in a payment during a forbearance. It will not be counted towards your loans now. That payment will not be applied until the forbearance ends. So if I was to ask to make a recommendation, I would say don't make the payment. I'm sure there are better ways that money can serve a purpose within your household, because it won't count now anyway. It won't count until the forbearance ends.
Aaron, how could people, I know you said that for everyone in SAVE, it's recertification is March, but where could they look to see when their recertification date is? Is it posted accurately now?
Now it has been. Some people still say NA. Very few, though. I haven't really seen anyone say NA over the course of the last month and a half or so. Your servicer is supposed to have your recertification date, although they always have it wrong. We'll try to dig a little deeper and see when your plan, when you were enrolled into your plan. That'll give us a more accurate depiction of when your recertification date was. But have your loans reviewed. We'll do a little digging and see when it is for you. So borrowers want to know, what can they do now while there is this uncertainty in the student loan market, whether you're in a forbearance because of the SAVE plan or otherwise. Right now, you're going to want to do the same things that you always should be doing. Make sure you're in a qualified repayment plan if forgiveness is your goal. Not just forgiveness, though, usually, not always, but usually, qualified plans for forgiveness are also the plans where you'll pay the least over the course of repayment, where interest will accrue the least, but the payments are more affordable on a month-to-month basis. So not only should you be in a qualified plan if forgiveness is your goal, but if your goal is also to pay the least amount over the course of repayment, if your goal is to pay principal and not so much in interest, you should also be in a qualified plan, because more often than not, they also provide you with these benefits as well. Make sure that you're not only applying for a qualified plan, but that you're properly enrolled into it. You don't know how many people, loans we review, who tell us they're in a qualified plan, and when we review their loans, they applied for one 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6, 7, 8 years ago, but they were never actually enrolled, or they were not correctly enrolled into the plan. You want to make sure, if you are in a plan, that you recertify that plan annually. You don't know how many people we see. 90% of people that are in qualified plans mess that plan up because they either did not know about recertification or they simply forgot to do so. You also want to keep a record of all your communications with the Department of Education and your servicer. One of their favorite lines is, "We never received it," or "We don't see in our system where that was submitted." Always keep a record so you'll have a point of reference to go back to when they mess it up, because they will mess something up every step of the way. So, a lot of talk around Washington is returning um, the responsibility of education back to the states. When our federal government, when it comes to education, when they say the states, what they mean are the servicers. These are the people, these are the people that, from the time, let's use public service loan forgiveness as an example. From the time public service loan forgiveness was created in 2007 until 2021, because of the servicers, there had only been 3,000 people that had their loans forgiven when millions qualified for it. From the time this current administration began fixing those programs, um, at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022 until today, just a 2-year period, there's been over 1 million people that have had their loans forgiven. The servicers handling these programs, or the states handling these programs, versus the federal government, is usually the difference between these programs working as they were intended and them not working at all. Anyone that's ever spoken to me or seen one of our webinars, they'll know I'm not a fan of the servicers. I'm of the opinion, and I have to speak carefully, I'm of the opinion they do what's in their best interest as opposed to the borrowers. So we keep that in mind. Um, they aren't known to freely give information. So we try to stay on top of all the information, how these plans and programs work, so that we can make sure that you're being properly enrolled into a qualified plan. You're being properly recertified into that plan. For those that qualify for public service loan forgiveness, they're terrible at counting time, the Department of Education and the servicers. We go behind them and make sure that that's being counted correctly. So all these things, these moving pieces is going on. What we know for sure is that it's going to affect qualified plans. Of the 4 qualified plans, at least 3 of them will go away when the SAVE plan does. The SAVE plan was repurposed. It used to be the repayee plan. It was repurposed. They had already, this administration, done away with the ICR plan and the payee plan. They temporarily brought them back because of the SAVE plan, but it's likely they'll go away too. I don't want to speculate too much. I try to stay out of that wilderness of opinion and just give you what we know to be fact. There will be a qualified plan left. It was written and passed by Congress and signed into law by the President of the United States. Any speculation, we'll wait till we have more concrete information.
A question came in on recertification. So if I do make my annual payments, would they not count towards my PSLF if I don't do the annual recertification?
Great question. So if you don't recertify your plan, they take that payment price away from you. They give you a standard repayment price, which is not a qualified plan. No, if you do not recertify your plan, or if you simply never have been enrolled into a qualified plan, none of your payments will count towards forgiveness, and it'll take you a lot longer to repay your student loans, and you'll pay a lot more over the course of repayment. So, what will happen to defaulted loans come January? So, the off ramp period was extended, meaning there's been a grace period since student loans went back into repayment in October of 2023 that has not allowed people to go into collections. When we say defaulted or into collections, what we mean is you've defaulted on the repayment plan in which you agreed to repay your student loans. Your loans are no longer with the Department of Education, they're with a collection company. This collection company will charge you 24% interest, 18% compounded daily. Come January, this will happen again. Your loans will leave the Department of Education. They'll go to a collection company if you're in default. You'll lose what are called your federal privileges, your ability to get student loans, but also your ability, if you're someone that receives one, to get an income tax return. The collection company will offset that return, meaning they'll take it. They usually only apply between $5 and $50 to the interest of your student loans. The rest they keep as a collection fee. And this isn't even the worst case scenario. What happens next is the worst case scenario, garnishment. They'll take 15% of every taxable income you receive, whether it's employment, unemployment, some investment income. They'll take 15% for the foreseeable future. So if you think your loans may be in default, have them reviewed immediately, and we'll guide you to getting them out of default before the turn of the year. So some things you want to keep in mind before inauguration. If you're someone that was in the SAVE plan, even if you're someone that's thinking about switching the SAVE plan, already have done so, or no longer in a plan, there's a possibility those months you were in a forbearance, there's a possibility you can buy them back. So the person that asked about this potentially being their last month in public service loan forgiveness, you will have the option to buy that month back when your loans go back into repayment from this forbearance. That's something you want to keep in mind. You want to keep in mind for those that qualify for the other required, for the other plan, qualified plan, excuse me. You may want to think about a program change. Keep in mind this plan does have an income threshold. Everyone isn't going to qualify for it. It is there are differences between this plan and the plans most of you would be used to, which is something we also can go over when you have your loans reviewed. I don't want to delve too deeply into something that doesn't apply to everyone, but you want to keep that in mind. A program change, you want to consider buying this time back. If you're not already enrolled, which 98% of people that actually qualify for it are not, you want to make sure you get enrolled into public service loan forgiveness. This is a huge one. If your loans are forgivable now, forgiveness is not an overnight prospect. The day you qualify for forgiveness, it won't come the next day. You want to apply for that as quickly as possible. So by the time these wheels of change are in motion, your loans are already in the process of being forgiven. You absolutely want to bring your loans back into good standing before the turn of the year. You do not want to get caught up in its default during this time of uncertainty. And you certainly don't want to have your wages garnished. It's extremely difficult and extremely expensive to get out of garnishment. There's an actual judgment against you in a court of law. You want to take care of that before the turn of the year and apply for a discharge if you qualify for it. This is a program that may be going away. We'll see how the winds change. But a discharge is if you went to a school that lost their accreditation. If you went to a school that closed down shortly after you attended or while you attended, it closed down. Or the school was for profit and are no longer in business. Or you've been diagnosed as totally or 100% disabled, and you may qualify for a disability discharge. Now is the time to put all these things in, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's qualified plans, whether it's discharges, or if you're just looking for a better, more affordable way to pay your student loans, now is the time to do it.
So Aaron, I've never seen this question before, but my school lost their ABA, which I believe is the American Bar Association accreditation. Does that make a difference for me?
It absolutely does. Depending on the school, you may be someone that qualifies for a discharge. There are a couple of factors that we would need to qualify to make sure that you do, but have your loans reviewed sooner rather than later because you may qualify for a discharge for those loans. Maybe not all of your loans, but certainly there's a possibility for the loans that you obtain from that school. It certainly is, which that actually was a great segue. So most people that apply for public service loan forgiveness, they're denied. Usually, as I mentioned earlier, because 98% of people that qualify for it never get it, is because you're not in the right plan, which means that you are not in a qualified plan to repay your student loans. Public service loan forgiveness will deny you 12 out of 10 times. Every time you apply and 2 extra, they'll deny you. What most people don't know is there is a temporary extended public service loan forgiveness process for those who repaid their loans under non-qualified plans, some non-qualified plans. If it's a non-qualified program, it won't apply. But if it's a non-qualified plan, then it may. You may have already been denied public service loan forgiveness. That does not mean you'll be denied for a TEPSLF. If you're someone who's been denied for public service loan forgiveness or has not been repaying under a qualified plan, have your loans reviewed, and we'll see if a temporary extended public service loan forgiveness application would work for you. So, what is it that we do? How are we able to help? The first thing we're going to want to do, if you haven't gotten if the point hasn't came across already, is review your loans. Without reviewing your loans, we're just speculating, which we would prefer not to do. Once we review your loans, we'll make an honest assessment, tell you what stood out to us, what we think you need to do. We'll run a projection based on that suggestion. You'll know exactly how much you could be paying versus what you're paying now, how long you should have in repayment, and how much, if any, the Department of Education expects to forgive at the end of your repayment period. At that point, you're free to take the information we've already given you and do these things yourself, or you can hire us to do them for you. And we'll be very upfront about what our cost is once we see what needs to be done.
So on the screen is a QR code. Take your phone, take a picture. That's the link to sign up for a loan review. We also have a Calendly URL, but it's probably easier. So, as you can see, there are a lot of things we do know, a lot of things we don't know. Having somebody to walk through your loans is probably the best gift you can give yourself right now to make sure you're on the right track. We know between now and the end of the year, our advisor team is slammed because everybody on this webinar and the thousands and thousands like you are concerned. We don't know what is next. Shutting down the Department of Education does take an act of Congress. You all are constituents of your local congressperson. So if you find something is going on in Washington that you don't agree with, our voices are really important to be heard to hopefully affect a change and keep these programs alive. So while I have the screen up, Aaron, I'll just run through a few more questions that came up. And if you have any more before we go, please type them in. Can you explain?
I'm
okay.
reading one now. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm going to read this one out.
Okay.
Other people may have the same question, but it also seems to be a lot more going on than the person asking may realize. So the question is, they were 4 payments away from PSLF forgiveness, but their loans were transferred to the SAVE plan. Now they haven't received credit qualified payments. So this could mean, if you don't see any qualified time, that you didn't just enroll into the SAVE plan, you may have done something that nullified your qualified time. If you saw it before and now you don't, that means you don't have any qualified time. There's a possibility that you took an extra step that erases your qualified time. The person that asked that question, I would sign up for a loan review right now. You may have nullified your qualified time altogether and not just switch plans, but you may have switched programs inadvertently. We see that quite a bit. Public service loan forgiveness conversations are usually heartbreaking, and that's one of the reasons why, because you'll change your program without knowing, and it'll nullify the time you had before. Have your loans reviewed so we can see if we can salvage that time.
Aaron, can you explain what the Borrower's Defense Program is?
So, because our government is usually more inept than they are helpful, discharges, even those who overwhelmingly qualify for discharges, they never went through. you literally would wait 4, 5, 6, 7 years before they would even tell you were denied for your discharge, and then you'd have to do it again. So a group of lawyers came together and created a nonprofit called the Borrower's Defense Discharge, where they help people with their discharges. They used to help people. They used to be a lot more hands-on. Now it's just another program to get your loans discharged that you're left on your own to do yourself. But the discharge program through the Department of Education is very narrow. The borrower's defense discharge, it opens that up to make sure a lot more people are able to qualify for the discharge program. It really is a tool that we use quite a bit to help people that don't qualify for the narrow discharge process that our government came up with.
So everybody who's registered for these webinars are going to be automatically added to our newsletter feed. If you want to opt out, you can. But we will continuously put before you information as we learn it, changes, things to do, things to avoid. We are all in this together. We know we are heading into some uncharted or uncharted water. Someone who raised their hand, if you would just type into the chat box, that'd be great. So we're here for you. I know that we have worked with a lot of you, and a lot of these names are super familiar, but there's a lot of new people on this webinar. So if you don't know who we are student loan advisors. We are a resource that is most likely offered by your employer. We're information providers. Our team of advisors are here to give you a one-time full complimentary loan review. Our goal is to make sure that everybody's in the right program to help them get through their student loan journey as painlessly and as efficiently as possible. And like Aaron said, some of these conversations are heartbreaking because there are programs that you are entitled to, that you have tried to enroll in, that you got rejected from, that there's no reason that you shouldn't be properly enrolled in it, and we're going to help get you there. So use us as a resource, use us for loan review. Join our monthly webinars. These change every time. I know a lot of you have been on these webinars each month, so it's always a little bit different because right now we're in a very fast and ever-changing world, especially as it surrounds our federal student loans. But everybody on this webinar, we have a voice. Use your voice. Let's make sure that we do what we can to keep these programs intact and as healthy as possible. The qualified program that's not going away, I believe it was on a slide. Aaron, correct me, it's the IBR. That's the one that was passed by Congress.
Yes, income-based repayment.
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. I guess we haven't hit on this in a while. So if somebody wants to have a loan with you or with one of our teammates, what information should they bring to the appointment?
That is a good question, and I'm surprised I didn't mention it already.
Yeah.
So if you haven't noticed, I'm not a fan of the servicers. Even their websites, if you know what you're looking for, they're really nonsensical. We would much prefer to review your loans on the Department of Education's website, studentaid.gov. That's studentaid.gov. If you want to have your loans reviewed, please just have your login for studentaid.gov. Everything else you'll know.
All right, that's our time for today. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you soon or having you on another webinar in the future. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.